Hello and welcome to Tech with Heart. So excited to have you join us today and to bring a value and benefit to you in the business world. I'm very excited about who our special guest speaker is today, and the topic is how do you master your business under pressure? Isn't that something that many of us small business owners who are wearing so many hats feel on a day-to-day basis? Well, there's ways to deal with that, and there's ways to organize that, and there's ways to address all of that, and that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode of Tech with Heart. So I wanted to thank you, Tina Greenbaum, who's going to be our expert for today. Thank you very much for joining us today, Tina.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
I am going to share a little bit about Tina before we get started. She is a high-performing specialist, holistic psychotherapist, author, speaker, and a workshop leader. She has over 35 years of experience helping CEOs and leaders and aspiring leaders to be as effective as they can by guiding them to find their own blind spots. Oftentimes when we're out doing our own thing, we just see the vision that we have and we don't even see what's coming at us from the side. So she's able to help leaders see what things that they don't see and things that they need to be addressing, but she helps them with both personally and professionally. And then she teaches them how to get the best from the teams that they lead. And I do understand the value of that. You can be a great, solopreneur, but building teams, that's a whole nother story. And then she teaches them how to lead even the employees to be happier employees so that the company has increased retention and greater productivity. Hallelujah. Who doesn't need this? So using cutting edge technology, she combines the latest in neuroscience with ancient traditions of the East. And she's the creator of the program Mastery Under Pressure. She even has a book, right? You wrote Mastery Under Pressure,
Yes.
An executive coaching program that teaches Olympic level mindset skills for peak performance in high stakes and high stress environments. So welcome, Tina, and please, everybody else, welcome Tina Greenbaum to the stage. Hello, thank you so much. Oh, wow, Tina, that's quite a history. You've been performing well and obviously making, before we get started into the nuts and bolts, can you share with us maybe one of your favorite stories over your history of doing this? You said 35 years of experience. What is one of your most favorite stories?
Oh, probably one of my most favorite stories is a client who was in the restaurant business. And she had grown up in it. Her father was a restaurateur, and she had grown up from the time she was a teenager. But she was also French, and as we have this stereotypical view of French people who are very kind of haughty and a little bit of aggressive and standoffish, that was how she presented, even though inside she had a really big heart. And so she was amazing. She was the manager of a restaurant in New York City, and she was amazing with her team and really very psychologically sophisticated. But when she would walk into the kitchen with the master chef, who was very much like her dad, she would lose it. And she'd become really anxious, and she couldn't really think very clearly, and she'd lose all her power. So a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today, she learned and she practiced. And she went on to lead 5-star restaurants in hotels with I don't know how many employees that she had underneath her, and beautiful and warm and smart and tech with heart, just a really, really beautiful person that emerged. So
that's wonderful. Tech with Heart is an environment in which we want to empower, businesses to be successful in a digital era. But with that comes knowledge of how to hold it together. I mean, it's such a key element, if
I know, that's a big part, but everything's going really well.
If you're losing it, or allowing, I know personally, you go through so many highs and you go through so many lows. It's quite a roller coaster. It can take quite a toll on the psyche, the mental side of things. So I'm really excited about having you share a little bit about how we business owners can address some of these things. We can see it coming. That's the best way to cut it off and address it before it goes and spirals down to, to that explosion. So what are the mental skills that one needs to success in business, to be successful in business? Can you share with us some of the things that you've seen over the years?
Sure. I have lived in Washington, D.C., where I worked with very powerful lawyers. I lived in New York City, where I work with actors and dancers and performers and financial people and CEOs and here now I'm in San Francisco with the tech crowd. And so I've worked over the years with many, many people who really need to hold it together. When I put that high-powered, high-stakes environment, this is really true. So I take a lot of the kind of the skills from, if you were an Olympic level athlete, you would no sooner go out there to compete without training the mental side than the man in the moon, really. And yet we expect business owners to have these high-level skills without training. So if you were an athlete, and these are the things that you would need to learn, you need to know how to focus, be laser focused. Also have that wide focus when you need it. So you need to be able to know which way you're going and what skill you need at which particular time. You need to be able to relax. So when we have a quiet body, we have a quiet mind. And when we get anxious, what happens is the energy begins to build and we lose that quiet body, and the body gets triggered before the mind gets triggered. So when the body gets triggered, the adrenaline goes off, the hormones start to, cortisol and all that kind of stuff, and we go into a stress response, and then our thinking goes right up out of our head, right into the ceiling, which is, if you've ever tried to make a presentation when you're really anxious and you don't know how to manage these skills, many times you can't connect, where did I go, what was I thinking, and you can't make those connections. So this is a really, really important and basic part of the way that I kind of look at performance. So focus, relaxation. I teach meditation. Again, looking at this, not only the Zen part, people say, oh, I can't meditate because I can't quiet my mind. Well, that's the mind. And so meditation is actually focused concentration. So when we focus on one thing, it could be a sound, it could be a picture, it could be a mantra, it could be a candle, a thought. Focusing that one thing quiets down the left side of the brain and opens up the right side of the brain where our creativity is and things kind of pop for us, right?
That's where I love to hang out.
Yeah, that's the most wonderful place in the world. And so the idea of meditation is, again, it's the exercise that you focus on this one thing, the mind wanders, you bring it back. The mind wanders, you bring it back. That's meditation. As an outcome, you might get to that place where things are really quiet. So it's the expectation that many times people don't go into it because they think, oh, I can't do this. So focus, relaxation, meditation, dealing with negative self-thought. I have a saying that I use a lot of times. It's not about positive thinking. It's about productive thinking. Do my thoughts produce something useful for me? Which is kind of a little bit different spin. When I get to do my TED Talk at one of these days, it's going to be on that. Positive thinking is highly overrated because there's many things that have to happen, that the mind and the body have to be in agreement. The unconscious has to be in agreement with the changes that we really say that we want to make. So that leads to a whole,
Yeah, it reminds me of the story. And like, if you, in order to be successful in business, you have to know where you want to go. And then it doesn't do enough to just think positively about where you want to go. It actually requires it requires some sort of a plan, and the plan is, okay, am I going by car or by plane or by boat? I mean, how am I going to get there? And then, let's look into a little bit more of the details. I always love the concept, like plan and then work backwards, figuring out what it's going to take to get there. And it sounds to me like the way that you're talking about thinking, positive versus productive, it's similarly, it addresses the strategic part, right? Where you have to actually know how these thoughts are going to produce, which would be the strategic part, I would imagine.
That's exactly right.
That brings the result of why you would even spend time thinking about it in the first place. I mean,
exactly.
Just thinking about it without figuring out how to make that manifest itself. There are those that think that you just put in a picture on your board and you just think about it enough and you dream about it enough, it'll happen. But there are some strategic steps that we can all be taking is to like get off the couch and do something already,
Exactly. You're exactly right, Michelle. So Yeah, so that's a whole big area to really kind of learn and discover, and what your thoughts are underneath your belief systems, and how, because the belief systems are frequently unconscious, and your conscious rules our behavior.
Yeah, and I love the fact that that's what aren't you like the whisperer? I mean, you're the one who is able to kind of spending a little bit of time with somebody. You had mentioned that you're able to like see things that they didn't have a clue, and that would be all stemming from the subconscious mind. Yeah.
So from the subconscious mind, and also from the body. There's lots of information. And for most of us in the Western world, we're cut off. And people used to ask me what I did. I'd say I teach people how to get below the neck. Because once we can make this connection, it's so
from your mind to your heart.
To your heart. It's not even just your heart. It's all the chakras, all the energy centers that have information for us. They reveal things. And so if I'm listening to somebody and I can see where they're holding the energy, or just ask me, where you experience this feeling? Sometimes people say, I have no idea. But frequently, if you just sit with yourself for just a moment and bring up the sensation of the feeling, we can find it in the body. And once we do that, then it begins to start to awaken the cells and awaken the memory. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. I'm just in here like going, my goodness, who doesn't need this?
You know, when we get into marketing and sales and all this kind of stuff, it's like, you have to focus. But really, if you're living and breathing, what I teach is incredibly valuable, no matter how old you are, no matter where you are in your life, no matter what you want to do. If you have, I consider it a toolbox. And if you pull out these tools and say, oh, okay, so just now, so we're doing this, right? And let's just say that the technology didn't work, which has happened how many times?
Yeah, right. Technology. You love technology when it works.
Right. And when it doesn't work, and we were scheduled to be on, and people are waiting, and so it's a natural thing for the energy to begin to start to rise, right? Because we've got this deadline, we have to make this happen. Mm-hmm. So just being aware of, okay, this is a stressful situation, could be, right? What do I need to do in order to have this quiet body and this calm mind so I can think clearly and I can do what I need to do in order to get back on track?
Yeah, to be able to control that is so key for those of you who are listening. Your body, you think of it as in the tech space, let's think of it, your body is kind of like the hardware and the mind is the software. And if your software is gummed up with malicious, malware, then you're just going to end up spinning, or it's going to be just, drudging through, and if you feel that cloudy brain, or sometimes you're just stuck in an infinite loop, not really making progress, even though you're having all the positive thoughts in the world. We're trying to have as many positive thoughts as you can. It really is key for you to be able to defrag the brain and bring it back to the cleanest form of manufactured settings possible. Sounds like Tina is the go-to. So go on, Tina. Okay. What is a practice that you feel that every business owner can apply? You mentioned a little bit about meditation. Boy, oh boy, there are some people who are so resistant to meditation. How can we think about it differently?
So if you think about the science, and what's been so wonderful for me, because I've been following my nose for about 36 years, really kind of like, how do I really help somebody at a fundamental level so that they experience themselves differently? Okay, so because again, we could talk, but you could be extremely knowledgeable, but you don't have the skill to be able to put stuff into action, right? So when the neuroscience started to explain things that the yogis have known for centuries and centuries, this really helps me, particularly with business people who are very practical and want facts, and science to back something up. So what happens when we meditate is, I kind of alluded to it a little bit, the part of the brain that is on alert all the time. There's a part that the amygdala in the hippocampus that it's a sentry, and it records every single thing that happens to us 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and it doesn't ever forget. So when something comes along that reminds that part of the brain of a traumatic experience or an old experience, it goes on alert, like this, right? So when we meditate, this part of the brain starts to quiet down, and the prefrontal cortex, which is our executive branch, which is the part that we need as business owners to be able to, again, to think clearly. There's chaos going on. All right, I'm the one that's in charge. I'm the one that has to be chill because my energy transposes to everybody else, right? So we know that if you're in the presence of somebody who's very anxious, we begin to start to pick up the anxiety unconsciously, right? Like, I was just feeling really great before you walked in the room, and now I'm like really anxious. I'm like, what did I do?
Raise your hand if you know somebody like that in your life.
Right, it's not mine, it's yours, right? So to be able to recognize that it's yours and not mine. Okay, so then I can come back and I can be calm, because that kind of energy, the anxiety, people pick up, but so does the calm. So when the leader is the one who really can look at everything, always think of the Apollo movie where the guy who was in charge when everything was kind of going to hell, and all right, we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this, and then and he just calmed everybody down. So the value of meditation is to increase the neural pathways to this part of the brain so that executively you can make decisions very quickly. And that is the hallmark of a leader. A leader sees things that other people don't see. And he or she sees them much more quickly and can delegate. Okay, let's do this, let's do that. I mean, who wouldn't want that?
I know. So let me ask you this. So what if you find that it really is incredibly difficult for you to quiet your mind and meditation seems impossible? Like it just seems impossible because you're not well trained yet, because it does take training. The brain isn't a muscle, just like every other muscle. If it's not something you've done much of, is there any other physical type of activity like jogging or any other thing that could potentially
jogging can work, and it kind of relaxes people. But again, when you're jogging, the mind is very free to just roam and get caught sometimes in something. So something like, I know it's kind of crazy, but like even tennis or golf or something that kind of takes the mind and I play tennis, and it's like the greatest vacation for an hour and a half, because I think of nothing but that tennis ball. Again, focus.
Yes. Okay.
It's really about focus. And so walking meditations, eating meditations, the mind is going to wander, and if you sort of are unwilling to put in the time to train, I always tell people, Michelle, that you cannot get to that place of real calm without a practice.
I agree.
Practice, some kind of, Tai Chi, yoga, things that move the energy.
So let's just say somebody decides they want to try to start meditating. If they're able to meditate for
2 minutes
and focus on nothing other than the one thing that they choose to do.
But again, let me bring it back to the mind is going to wander. That's the given. And the more that we allow ourselves to go through that practice, the more the muscle will build. It's like any other skill. Again, you don't have to be sitting, but you have to be doing something where if I'm just watching my hand, I'm just watching my hand, I'm just watching my mind wanders, I come back and I watch my hand. It doesn't really matter what it is that you focus on, but the brain has to wrap around this one thing. So with energy, there's kind of a saying with it, whatever you put out comes back. Whatever you put out comes back.
Yeah.
So if you put out a very diffused mind, that's what you're going to get back. You're going to get back
a
lot of stuff. If I just, kind of focus on this pen. In one of my trainings, that's what I have people do. I have them take out a pen and just focus on the pen. I got this appointment this afternoon. Oh, I'll bring it back to the pen. Just over and over and over again. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. So those of you who are listening, it start with just a 2-minute exercise, and then it will get easier over time.
Okay, and so again, I really want to, we get caught up in the end result. You know, we want to be the Zen person. Maybe, maybe not. Just doing this is a practice. This is the practice.
So what she's doing is she's moving her finger from left to right for those of you who are just listening.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's it. That's a practice. And the more you're willing to do it, I mean, there are other things. There are alternate nostril breathing. There's focusing on the breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You know, again, there's so many different things that you can focus on, and exercises. And you know, in my book, I have a couple of different exercises, things that people can do. There's stuff online that people can find. But just to remember, you don't have to be the Zen master.
Right.
Say that I'm meditating.
And I think that that's important for most people to hear, is that you know, you always got to start somewhere. You just got to want to help yourself in this arena. If you want to be an effective leader, you want to be able to grow your company by building teams, you need to be the effective leader that other people will follow. And being able to hold your you know what together in the stressful situation is going to help you do that. Awesome. Thanks, Tina. So you had said that you wrote a book, right? So what are some other, let's see, ways that you can bring yourself back to neutral when you're starting to feel stressed? I mean, when you find yourself arriving in that moment where you're feeling those, that flutter feeling.
Right. So the most powerful thing that you have available to you that doesn't ever cost anything, and you don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to have anything, is your breath.
Is your breath.
Is your breath.
Very nice.
Wonderful saying that says your mind is where your breath is. So if your breath is short and shallow, which is where it goes when we feel anxious, and for many of us, we live this way all the time. You don't even realize it. And so here, if you're, and I'm pointing to the upper chest, if your breath is up here, your mind is going to be very spinny. So the challenge for you is to get your breath. I used to have a friend who used to call it like a pear, low and wide. So you want your energy in your feet.
Mm-hmm.
And if you practice, there's a 3-part breath. It's called a yogic breath. And again, it's something that I teach, and that you can find it in different places. And it's a 3-part breath. You start in the belly, then into the rib cage, and then you bring it into the upper chest. Most people go to the upper chest first, which is exactly what you're doing. I can see it. And
I was trying to start from my bottom.
It's not easy. It's not natural. It's natural for children. It's not natural for infants, actually. And it's natural if we lie on our belly, because we have to pull the breath from the belly. We can't pull it from the chest when we're lying on our belly. Okay. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of psychology that goes into bringing the breath up through the spine, up to the top of the head, because you're going through the energy centers, the chakras. Those people that aren't familiar with it, in yoga, they're energy centers, and each one has a physical, a psychological, and a spiritual, and a color connected to it. So I can watch people lying on their back, and I can watch them breathing, and I can tell where the breath gets stuck. And then that gives me an indication of some of the psychological barriers or armor that somebody has built energetically, so that they don't hurt. They don't feel bad. They protect themselves. So again, this stuff has so many different levels. But what I saw, and getting it up into the top of the chest is not easy. Because again, when we're anxious, our muscles are tight. See, and it's beautiful. She just started to yawn, which lets me know, okay, that she brought in more oxygen. Right. So that's a wonderful sign when people start to yawn, and they get sleepy, because now we're getting freer. The muscles are relaxing. We're bringing in more energy. We have more space. Okay. So just as an example, I just came back last week. I was in Philadelphia and New Jersey. My brother-in-law passed away, my sister's husband. And so being involved in funeral and all the pieces that were going on, and I got home at like 5 o'clock in the morning. It was actually 2 o'clock in the morning, but 5 for the time change and so on. And so the next morning I got up and I could just feel my whole body was completely tense. And so I did exactly what I'm suggesting to you. I lie down on the floor and I started to do that 3-part breathing so I could begin to start to open my body again. And just that awareness of how tight I was gave me an indication of what I needed to do. And then having the tool to do it, right? And now I feel much more like myself again. And
like centered, is that the phrasing, you centered or grounded?
Centered, grounded, yes. But again, physiologically, it's really bringing in the breath, because the breath, and this is the other thing that's really important to remember, it's the only voluntary mechanism that we have that can change the nervous system. Okay, we have 2 aspects of our nervous system. It's the sympathetic nervous system, which is the one that gets aroused when we go into a stress response. And the parasympathetic nervous system is the one that's, got lots of money in the bank, everything's good. And so in our culture, most of us live in the sympathetic nervous system, and we never really kind of get the body to relax, which then makes us more vulnerable to stress-related diseases because it knocks down the immune system.
Wow. That was very enlightening. I hope you're finding value by listening, because she's sharing some really golden nuggets here. I mean, if you really want to be an effective business person, you need to know how to take best care of yourself. And if you want to be an effective leader, you need to be the calm in the storm. You need to be able to guide and lead under pressure. And that's why her talk is titled Mastery Under Pressure. Her book is called Mastery Under Pressure. So Tina does know what she's talking about. Tina, do you know of any technology, any apps? I know with the Internet of Things, there are little bracelets people are able to wear, even necklaces that are able to keep track of their pulse, keep track of their heart rate. Also encourage them to get up, stretch, move around every so often. Do you have any technology that you found that's effective in helping people?
Not. I'm just sort of an old-fashioned.
No worries. I just was
but I know that they're out there. People, I have clients that tell me, just off the top of my head, Michelle, I really don't know, because it doesn't really matter what you do. It's the fact that you do it, and the fact that you are doing things frequently enough so that the body has the opportunity to respond. So it's just like any other skill. It takes practice, repetition, practice and repetition, practice and repetition. It takes about 30 to 40 days to create a new habit, to create new pathways in the brain. And if you give yourself the challenge, the good news about meditation, I'll tell you something very funny. Many years ago, I went on a silent retreat for 10 days with it was my spiritual teacher, and somewhere in Mexico, and it was this beautiful place, and you couldn't talk, but we did a lot of meditation. So we meditated and did a lot of breathing, and it's called pranayama in yoga, and getting everything open and expanded, and it really felt like I was on drugs. It was just the breath and meditation.
You hear that, guys? Those of you.
Right.
What are you feeling?
I said, I don't get it. I said, it's not illegal. It's not immoral. And it feels so freaking good. And he said, that's the secret. And it truly is. It truly is.
Wow. I want to feel that way. Wow. You've been an incredible guest. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I know, Tina, you had spoken a little bit too about how can people work with you? And I want to just share your website here. You have a gift that you'd like to offer people, right?
I do. I have a quiz. And it's actually, if you go to my website, you can find it, or if you go to masteryunderpressure.net.
Yeah, it's on the screen there for those of you watching. So yeah, go ahead.
And then you can see where you are. I have 5 different categories: focus, relaxation, dealing with negative self-talk, how to visualize, and then dealing with fear, which we didn't get a chance too much to talk about, but just huge.
Fear is a big one in business. Fear is a big one actually in this day and age with all of the craziness going on.
And so I have a saying too, it's how to use fear as your greatest teacher. And it's the only thing that gets smaller as you get closer. So there's a whole bunch of stuff around fear. So you can see on that quiz, where you are. And then there's an opportunity if you are interested and really want to have a conversation. I offer a 30-minute consultation where we can really assess where the problems are and then solutions on how to, things I'm pretty good at is assessing pretty quickly, like where the work needs to happen. And then I have my book. So a lot of the things that I teach are in the book. And I also have an online program. So it's all based on all the same things. That's my curriculum.
That is awesome. So those of you who, again, masteryunderpressure.net, go there and take the survey, find out where you're sitting, where you're finding that you may need a little bit of extra help. And keep in mind when you start feeling that rise of anxiety, even that rise of fear, we didn't talk about it much, but it's just it's a form of anxiety, I would imagine. Yes. Try the deep breathing exercises, try the meditation, try to just pull yourself out of the environment that's causing that if you have time to just go put yourself in a closet or something and just try the deep breathing to the point where you can maybe just do 2 minutes of meditation. That's a great place to start, perhaps. Am I right on that?
Absolutely. And I have one other thing that I'd love to share, which is also the mind part. So we've got the body part, which is the breath, and the mind part. If you find yourself in that kind of pickle, the question is, what's in my control? What's out of my control?
Mm-hmm.
That's the operative question, because stress is the perceived amount of control that we think we have or we don't have. So it's always really like, okay, so what are my choices? What are my options? What do I have control over? You know, and that helps us very frequently to see things much more quickly because we can zero in on it and go from there.
Thank you for that. That was amazing. So thank you very much, Tina, for joining us on this Tech with Heart show today and talking to us about how we can be a master under pressure. And if you're interested in working with Tina, again, just go to masteryunderpressure.net, take the quiz, learn a little bit more about yourself, and see if she's a good fit to help you master your stress and grow your business so that you can be a more effective leader.